From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. More Idaho Matters right now. The National Firefighter Registry is perhaps the most ambitious effort to date to understand the connection between firefighting and cancer. But among the many impacts of the Trump administration's recent firings at the Department of Health and Human Services was its indefinite shutdown. The Mountain West News Bureau's Murphy Woodhouse has been reporting on the NFR since its registration portal launched 2 years ago. And Murphy's back to tell us more about this. Murphy, nice to have you back on the show.
Yeah, glad to be here to talk about this.
So, Murphy, to get started, tell us a little bit more about what the NFR is for folks who may not remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get up to speed together. So, I've spoken with a number of people about the program over the last couple of years, and what you hear is a lot of superlatives, and I don't think it will be particularly compelling to hear more of those from me. So let's actually just start hearing from Dr. Jeff Burgess. He is a public health professor at the University of Arizona who's been studying firefighter health for several decades.
The National Firefighter Registry for Cancer, NFR, is the best way to improve our overall understanding of cancer risks across the entire fire service.
So that is the view of one of the most informed people in the United States about issues of firefighter health. So in 2018, Congress directed the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, or NIOSH, to create a voluntary registry for firefighters to determine the incidence of cancer in the profession. It was intended to explore that connection within the subdisciplines of firefighting, structure, of course, the most common, wildland, volunteer, etc. And a program dashboard that actually does remain live, interestingly, shows that as of March 31st, just before it shut down, nearly 24,000 people had registered. And I should say here that doesn't include me. Of those, the vast majority, 88.4%, had structure firefighting experience in their career, and notably 17.5% had wildland experience. I'm sure that there are some math whizzes out there who note that just those two numbers add up to over 100%. Of course, many people will have many different sorts of experiences in their fire careers. I've a number of friends that went from wildland into structure, so that's why that's the case. But I highlight wildland because that is a corner of fire where the risk of cancer is arguably least understood. And at the time of the shutdown, the registry was growing steadily. It was picking up steam even. The goal of reaching some 100,000 or more firefighters was, really seeming to be reachable. And so the NFR came about in the context of growing evidence that firefighting, in addition to putting workers, of course, in regular immediate danger, also presents significant long-term health risks. So researchers have found higher rates of several cancers across the firefighting profession. And this, every time I read this fact, it still stuns me. But yeah, in 2022, a group at the World Health Organization even classified the work as carcinogenic to humans on the basis of sufficient evidence for cancer in humans. I mean, I think it's worth pausing on that for a moment, that calling a job carcinogenic, right? We're used to carcinogens being, the materials or toxins, but literally just saying this work, the nature of this work is carcinogenic to humans. So given all that, I think that our listeners can now better understand why one official told me that the shutdown of the NFR was devastating. And as a former wildland firefighter who's in the registry and who has regularly worried about the long-term implications of this work to myself and to my many friends in fire, I am very comfortable sharing that I was also devastated by the shutdown. Given what we already know, the answers that the NFR was likely to provide would have been disturbing. I mean, it's hard to imagine that they wouldn't be, but they're answers that firefighters, I think, are owed, and that we need to address this serious workplace safety problem.
Well, Murphy, I appreciate you talking about your personal experience with this. I mean, I know, a lot of times as journalists, we're not supposed to give our opinion, but you are directly impacted by this decision, having been a wildland firefighter. So you said you were devastated. I mean, where are you now in this process, just from a personal standpoint, you and your colleagues? Because as you said, this at least gave you information, right, about what the potential risks were or could be to you in the future.
Yeah, exactly. It was a somewhat lengthy registration process. I actually went through it for the story. That actually my first feature for the Mountain West News Bureau. You can actually hear me typing through the questionnaire. And so since then, you don't really have to do anything. You're kind of just in there. And the way it works, again, I'm not super familiar with the specifics, but the basic idea is that when and if a cancer diagnosis is made, that's essentially linked to those who have registered. So my understanding is that once you're registered, you're kind of in the system, and then things kind of work from there. But yeah, it's I have very specific memories, after seasons would conclude, of Googling around, like just like what is this doing to me, like what is known, and just like basically not believing that that there just wasn't anything out there. But that was basically the case. And so, it's like it's hard to. It's a weird feeling to be excited about something potentially this disturbing, but it's like these. Obviously these are answers that we need, and so just it was it was an easy decision for me to participate. I feel like I have an obligation to myself, but certainly the many thousands of young women and men who do this extremely dangerous work every single summer.
So, Murphy, what exactly happened here, as far as you can tell, then, with this shutdown, basically?
Yeah, so I was following reporting from the news service Fire Rescue One. They reported on April 2nd that the registration portal was offline, and the reporter was told by NIOSH that the program was shut down indefinitely. And then I was told in an email that from the agency that, quote, due to widespread staffing cuts within NIOSH, the NFR enrollment system is down indefinitely. Access to the data is currently restricted. Data are not able to be analyzed at this time. And that shutdown came in the wake of massive layoffs at HHS, or Health and Human Services. And that's the parent agency of NIOSH and the CDC. And I do also want to say that the NFR was one of many public health efforts heavily impacted by these layoffs. NPR, I believe, reported yesterday that much of the federal workforce that researched injury and violence prevention was also eliminated. And so for my reporting, I spoke with a high-level CDC official familiar with the NFR on the condition that they not be named for fear of retaliation. And so they further explained that the shutdown was, quote, primarily due to the fact that all our IT professionals were laid off. And so we don't have IT professionals available to manage, monitor, and maintain the NFR enrollment system. And then ProPublica just reported that at least 2/3 of NIOSH employees were notified that they were either laid off on April 1st or would be laid off in June. And, I, of course, reached out to HHS and the CDC for comment on the matter, and nearly 2 weeks ago, I got a single line attributed on background to an HHS official, and it read as follows: CDC is actively working to ensure continuity of operations during the reorganization period and remains committed to ensuring critical programs and surveys continue. And so I followed up again on Monday to see if they had a better sense of when the NFR might be functional again, and had not heard back by the time we're recording right now. And I regularly check the NFR registration page. That's nfr.cdc.gov, and it's still giving the service unavailable error. And I literally have it up right now, and I'm just going to refresh. And there it is, HTTP 1.1 service unavailable.
So tell us more, Murphy, if you can, about what this unnamed official told you. What are their big concerns here?
Well, they've certainly got a lot of them. So I have a wildland fire bias, of course, but they're also concerned about what this means for knowledge about cancer risks in that subdiscipline. And I'll just read what they said word for word. Quote, "We also know probably the least amount about wildland firefighters' risk of cancer. I think the NFR was positioned to really help bridge that gap and improve our understanding of all firefighters' risk of cancer. But I think especially for wildland firefighters, we know so little, and I think we could have learned a lot, and still can if the NFR is restored." And they went on to say, "I think it would be a travesty for that data to just sit there and for no one to analyze it. I think it would be a travesty for the NFR to stop enrolling firefighters." But they also wanted to highlight that the NFR was one of many efforts intended to address health concerns in fire. They've tested and approved respirator prototypes. They investigate line of duty deaths and toxin exposure. They put out a pocket safety guide for first responders. And here's what that official went on to say. Our research has led to advancements of PPE, that's personal protective equipment, engineering controls, revised standards, new policies and procedures, and that's certainly the case within the fire service too. So I just really want to highlight that without NIOSH, a lot of that work would not have happened. And without NIOSH moving forward, it begs the question, who is going to take it on? And if no one takes it on, what are the consequences?
So, Murphy, my understanding is you were able to recently follow up with this high-level official.
Absolutely. And yeah, so it had been a few weeks since we spoke. And since I didn't hear back from HHS with kind of an updated anticipated timeline, I wanted to see if there were any new information on the status of the NFR. And here's what they said. And again, I'm reading what they told me word for word. We haven't gotten any news regarding the future of the NFR. It's been mostly silence. So there's nothing that's certain that it would be restored at this point. And that's especially frustrating, they said, because the NFR enjoys such broad support from fire organizations, of course, but also from many members of Congress, which, again, I mean, in 2018, they mandated the effort. This was a congressionally mandated effort. And, who, after all, is pro-firefighter cancer? But it's also frustrating, the official added, because enrollment had been going so well right up until the shutdown. And so here they are one more time. But again, it'll just be me reading their quote. Over the last 3 months, we were averaging 1,600 new participants every month. That was the highest rate of enrollment since we launched. We had hit our stride. We were successful in terms of enrolling new participants, and we were moving forward with a lot of new partnerships, they said. All of that, at this point, has stopped.
Well, Murphy, really appreciate you bringing this to all of our attention. We've been speaking with Murphy Woodhouse, reporter with the Mountain West News Bureau, about the closure of the National Firefighter Registry for Cancer. We will, of course, put a link to Murphy's story on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. This is the Idaho Matters podcast. I'm Gemma Gaudette.